Recording. Okay, so we started. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay, so I imagine there'll be people joining as this gathers some momentum, but I've got a PowerPoint planned and there are other details that you can ask me at the end. So we'll have a bit of a Q&A at the end. You know what's what about art as a group, I imagine. So nothing really changes, although the time that you are timetabled for obviously your A-level subjects is more, and therefore, as you know, because you're living it or you have lived it, art. Sometimes, I was just discussing with Emma, sometimes you don't feel creative, sometimes it's hard, but you've all earned the right and you've all got the skills just to get stuck in and indulge yourself, but in a normal timetable. It doesn't allow for sort of whimsical creativity. You got to be on it, and got to do it. So the assignments, when they're set, when we get back in September, will be predominantly 2-week affairs, and more about the teaching a bit later if you wanted to know about that. But I think what we'll do is we'll just go through expectations a little bit, go through the dynamics of the course. Normally you are in as a group. We have the CGS in on one day for induction lessons, and we also have the external candidates on another day, and we just do art. So we're doing just for a lesson, it will be drawing, and rather more expressive drawing, just to get some sort of creativity going, just to sort of get a sort of creative community beginning. And I think it's how you work or rely on each other, as well as much as it's about you being disciplined to get on with art tasks at home. But you know, from the list and from the people who are attending at the moment, there's no problem with discipline at all. Although I do understand that it can be difficult to timetable. So I'm just going to share my screen, and we will just look at the PowerPoint that I've generated, because it's just easier. I think there are things here that I can then discuss, or you can ask questions about as I scroll through. But really, I've tried to summarize the course. Let's just try and get into here. I'll press play. Summarize the course within a few slides. So I'll just tap my way through. So welcome, and if you're watching this as a recording, then good for you, because any questions that you might have, you won't need to email me or get in touch with school. It will all be on this PowerPoint, which I will put on Teams, and I will probably attach it to your Canvas account. And again, there's always ways that you can communicate with me. Again, show work, or generally, if you have something that perhaps you later think, oh, I wish I asked that, then I'm happy to answer any of those queries. So this slide series contains an introduction, as I said, and in here you've got things that are important right now, which is the pre-course summer assignment and the Year 12 scheme of work, of which we will be beginning in September. But again, looking at the caliber of artists, you will have started, or if not, you will be keen to get going anyway. So this is the first slide, is an updated, and I have refined it a little bit. I know some of you have got a copy of this and the original, but I have had to, well, I've adapted it a little bit to creatively. I can be a little whimsical, but that is my prerogative, because I think I'm an artist, and I'm always keen on developing the curriculum in light of what has gone before. So rest assured that if I briefly spoke about results, you'd know, if you were a student at school, that they are the best in the school, and they're the best in the county for fine art, and probably the best results this side of Hadrian's Wall, because of the amount time that students spend committing to study and getting good. And there's no two ways about it. It's something I'll revisit at the end, that it is about time. But that time tends to be a little more insignificant when you've got direction and when you are resourceful and you're a problem solver. It doesn't feel like work. Now, at your level, you will all be art superstars, I bet. And even if your grades don't materialize in the summer, there's enough going on in your working attitude to suggest that this cohort will be as good as the previous one. So last year, the results were 77% AA star, which is streets above everything else, and 33% of those were A star themselves. Nobody got below a B, because partly because they listened when they needed to listen, and they acted on advice, which is key. And sometimes taking criticism for a creative subject that you love doing or should love doing is hard, but there will be times when I might drop a bidalism in, which will be candid, but it'll be honest. And if I wasn't honest with how you can progress, then you would not improve, and you would not just see the benefits in regards of grades. And I know a lot of you will go on to art college this year. Out of 20 students, I've got about 85% going to do art foundation courses, and they've all got a place. So there's 100% entry success rate post course, which is reassuring. And by hook or by crook, when we sort portfolios out and just generally your working practice.
Microsoft Teams video.
Oh, hello. Hold on. That's the nature of technology. It'll just catch me adrift. So this is the summer assignment. I've got they are linked with growth and decay, so let them, if they can subconsciously guide your project work, they can guide the choices that you make about what you're responding to with media. But really, the 3 bullet points are such that what I'd love some quality drawings, time spent drawing using a sharp 3B pencil, is time. All that time is getting better at a skill. So the drawings that, again, you will be presenting these to the group when we get back, either anonymously or if it makes you fidget, or generally in front of your cohort. It is, what level of skill are you at? How have you interpreted this brief, and how can you use media and materials and exploit the inherent qualities of what you're using? So there's no way that I'd expect you to approach a task with a biro the same as with oil paint or the same as with oil pastel. They are worlds apart in media, and it's the ability of a student to learn by practice to help negotiate those qualities, and that's what makes a top student. So three quality drawings, nothing smaller than A3. A2 is ambitious but good, and you won't be strangers to generating drawings that size, and they are always impressive, and invariably they feature in final portfolios as well. So 3 quality drawings. I'd like you to, and this is new, but this is the bit I'm more interested in, to make an A5 concertina sketchbook, which you have to be creative and a little problem solving. You can make it as interesting and varied as you like, but the A5 is a portrait panel of which you will then concertina or find some way of connecting at least 5 pages, so there'll be studies on either side of which we can hang up or just present on a table. And drawing from observation is a better discipline because it allows you, it's difficult, it's the most difficult, and it allows you to respond directly to the world, so without any negotiation of style. It's you as an artist. So I want you to draw from observation on these panels after creating them, and these A5 pages, which are concertina together, can be anything, paper or card or combinations of those things. I quite like you to, and at its best, you'll look to use different types of tape, different types of surface that you'll then draw and produce studies on. I'd like some art experiments, unfinished ones on either side, including the materials I've suggested here. I'd like you to contribute it to, as it sounds like a few of you are, on a regular basis. Try, if you can, and like the photographers, try and do something every day, even if it's just 10 minutes spent on a drawing that you've already started. But if you can get into the habit of just contributing regularly, every 10 minutes spent purposefully is 10 minutes better. Any half an hour. So don't leave this till the last minute and try and crack through some drawings at the end. It won't work. Try and take control over the project initially. Create your own sketchbook, concertina sketchbook, and make a front cover, back cover. Take ownership over it, and then generate your work on top. Not just white pages, because again, I'd like you to start thinking a little bit more with breadth about your work. And as you know, you can draw and paint on book pages, or newspaper, or packing, or whatever. And so please be creative at the initial stages as well. I'd like you to also buy an A3 art journal. Now, if you can't get to school for the pop-up shop, of which we operate on a needs basis, and next week I can give you some idea about if there is interest, when you can come in and get a book, and not only get a book, but you can, that sentence doesn't finish at the end, I have to document that. So you can get other materials as well, charcoal and paper and things that perhaps you only need a fragment of, you don't want to buy a big box of. But as you know, we've got a well-stocked larder here. But you will start in September working in an A3 art journal. And for some of you at the top or the cutting edge of creativity, as a few of you are, you might like to start before that. So it will be an opportunity whereby you can, if it's hanging around, you might use it. So an A3 art journal is important. But the other two are the creative exercise, and that is your summer assignment, which we'll have a look at in September. Oh, I'll just go back one. How do I get out of here? So this is again on the slides. This is available for you, just a screenshot of what is coming up from September onwards. It will enable you to plan your journal if you wish. It will enable you to look at what's next. And I've got some examples of this, not only on Pinterest, but they will be attached to this series of slides, and also they will be elsewhere in the teams that you have been invited to. And basically everything in blue is something that staff at school will promote. We will lead the creative sort of discourse and media and lessons in this regard. They're often stimulated by artists' work, and then they are often stimulated by live and primary source material. But they are, again, different aspects of art, but the core skills of fine art, drawing and tone, painting, three-dimensional work, sculpture, but also your understanding of the formal elements, again, because it's just practice. That's what you'll be encouraged to do, and it works, and if it's done purposefully, you will be amongst a cohort, hopefully, that will be 77% A*A at the end, through your own ambition, not mine. My job, as I'm finding, is just bum kicking gently, of which it's difficult at the moment, and sometimes it's tricky. Artists sort of can lose their way a little bit without that constant looming threat of Biddle sort of just prodding them in the ribs. But nonetheless, The pink section halfway through, the yellow square there, it's about just before Christmas, maybe, whereby you look at what the work you've produced, and you'll have a portfolio of loose studies as well. Then you get creative control over the Growth and Decay title, of which it travels through Christmas holiday, and then it continues through that spring term, of which Easter, the first project, Growth and Decay, is done. The second half is something that we have one-to-one relationship on, regarding what are your motivations, what would you like to do with the title, what style of art, etc. So that's where you have autonomy. But previous to that, on the blue squares, it really is, it's about you looking at developing your core skills. Hold on. Let me just go previous again. So I have on this slideshow as well given you some examples of double pages in a journal. Some candidates or some student artists may not be from CGS, and they perhaps work in a different way, but I find this is an A3 sketchbook, and this is one of the first tasks. It's often guided by the art that we look at and then we respond to, and this sort of thing should be familiar to artists from CGS. It's something, because an A3 journal I can collect, and it can be then distributed and peer assessed. It's just a convenient way of learning, of recording progress in the sort of chronology of skills, and which we can see a few at the beginning here. So Georgia O'Keeffe is fundamentally about natural form. Top right there's this interesting sort of combination art piece combining Giacomo Balla and Picasso, and because you're responding to secondary sources in that exercise, it's quite nice. It's quite liberating. In fact, you haven't got to generate your own version for that particular exercise. It's just enjoying different shapes and the nature of putting those things together. Things like brainstorms. I've got on the bottom right there is Growth and Decay brainstorm, again in the right hands. Every double page tends to be a creative exercise, much like your GCSE book at its best. Every double page has your own art on it too. So again, some really nice sort of combination art pieces on the right hand side, somebody beginning to develop a style, but really double page in your journal is about you negotiating art materials, but there's no denying that when presented well and in sympathy with the media materials that are being used, it can turn into a document which is persuasive. And when you look at and you moderate work, there's no discrete marks for presentation, but it does help a moderator negotiate progress, look at attention to detail, look at people exploring different media, taking time and care over their work, and you'll find these people that do that, obviously, or often in amongst the top of assessment for their cohort. This was something that the school have sent through, which is just about generating good habits when you're looking at developing your skills or progressing through the fine art curriculum. They are tasks based on almost working beyond what is being set, but generally getting into good habits on a sort of continual basis. The seniors are going to be responding for their own personal project. So in year 13, you get to select from the beginning. It's around about now we're negotiating their project, and it can be absolutely anything to do with art and design or that sort of creative world. Sometimes that much choice is difficult because you think, well, I can do anything, therefore I don't do anything. But if it's sculpture you are wanting to do, or if it's more traditional portrait painting or landscapists or whatever, you'll be encouraged to, again, take ownership over it. So the pre-course summer project is designed to, as it says, create art experience and generate technical ability, as with everything. And I mentioned the nature of the assignment here as well. And again, it's about contributing that to on a regular basis and get into some good habits. You know, look for inspiration. It can come from a variety of sources. Often it can come from Pinterest or websites like Art Today, but it may come from the newspaper, and I've done a couple of paintings which have just been based on photographs that I found in the Telegraph. It's something that if you are looking, you'll find. If you don't look, obviously, it will just pass you by, and you may have missed something. So make a scrapbook. Keep up to date with ideas. Look when you can online for paintings or artworks that are inspiring, and you'll build up a body of work that you can then rely on when you do feel inspired. The next are a few slides about project work or paintings from senior students that have obviously gone through the processes at CGS, and as I've said, there is store, or I hold great store in technical skills, of which can then be used as the art student sees fit. But there's core skills there that are not negotiable and that do translate. So something which has a technical skill, fundamentally drawing, is important. And I know these are realistic paintings, and they may be familiar to you. So they're quite large scale oil paintings. And you may think at this time that this is just going to be impossible. How am I ever going to get to that standard? Well, you will. And if you put the time in, you will. And the rest is about sort of structured learning. It's about repetition, and it's about looking and acting on advice, of which is probably the most important. So a few things that are familiar, again, ambitious from the previous cohort. And often these occur at the end of the course. So this is year 13 painting, maybe for their exam unit, and maybe for the end of the coursework unit. And they're quite different styles, and there's quite different subject matter. And you will be encouraged to generate your own art directions. And then as staff, we will then advise on a one-to-one basis in tune with your motivations. A lot of these pieces were up in the gallery space, and art tends to rely on some at CGS tends to rely on some quite traditional skills, but in a modern framework. There, I like art students to be at the sort of forefront of art movements now, and the style of things now. And again, what we're going through now, in fact, the politic of the day may encourage you to work in a particular way. I quite like you to, again, take responsibility over your working practice, but also understand that art can have its own power, and it can have its own persuasive quality. And to persuade somebody of a mood, of a narrative, of an idea on a purely visual basis is incredibly skillful. And again, you lot have worked hard to be at a level where you can begin to persuade others, not just render things beautifully in pencil. You can begin to reorganize the world or say something about something, to communicate. And I think particularly at this time, over the last 6 months, or certainly over the last 4 months, we need artists that can reassure, that can provide edge, that can provide solace. Those things in our sort of creative instinct are important to us as people. So again, a variety. What a cracking selection of work that is. So there's some sort of landscape as a beautiful sort of seascape painting, and all these artists didn't start off like this. They worked hard to inform themselves of art that they enjoyed, that they thought they had some affinity with, that they could then go away and reproduce, and then take responsibility for. So much like you've been doing, you'll be encouraged to copy, to learn, and you know, be under no illusion or no disillusion in the fact that artists have been doing this since time began. Frequently, even in the Impressionist era, when you go into a gallery, there would be artists there with an easel set up on a stool, because it was allowed, painting other people's paintings, but in a very brazen way. There was nothing. It was encouraged. It was something that was the only way back in that turn of the century that you could learn from others. There were artist communities which build up, like the Impressionists, and they did share their sort of common circumstance. But it's what we should do. It's how we learn. So don't feel like it's a working practice like copying art or copying fragments of paintings is something that we should be clandestine about. Quite the opposite. Copy, look, draw, respond. As long as you're motivated, there'll come a time then that you take responsibility over it, and there'll come a time then that you work in the style of, and then you begin to develop your own way through. So again, there are no secrets to the course, and as you know, because you've lived through it for a bit, it is purely based on practice, and it's about that empirical learning. Do get some feedback, respond. An early commitment would be beneficial. So early commitment study would be rewarded. So good luck and be productive over the holidays. Try, when you've got the headspace, to use art as a way maybe of clearing your head, of again relying on the skills that you've got to generate art that you're proud of, and that there's nothing like it. And people will look at your art as they are doing at the moment, saying, well, how do they do that? How do they do that? And it's like when you hear a symphony, it comes from hours of practice. End of story. So get stuck in. Now, for those of you who are obviously converted, Pinterest tends to be a space whereby you will find endless inspiration, depending on how and when you look. Obviously, this inspiration may be latent. You know, it might just be there when you need it. It's difficult for us to be inspired all the time. But on the boards that I run, I've got some of my own painting there, actually, in those oil paintings, which, let's have a little bit of an indulgency. What have I got in there? So I tend to respond more so to the landscape because it allows me a sort of freedom that portraiture doesn't. And also I've been doing some digital drawings, of which again, digital drawing and film work are all part of the fine art process. So you can legitimately display these or present these in your final portfolio if you have an iPad, or if you have any digital drawing package. And this is just on brushes, Redux, on the iPad. It actually is quite a discipline doing digital drawing, and this is just from observation, but you've got no choice but to work from back to front. And the good thing is you can erase it as you go along, and also with your eyedropper tool you can just get the perfect color whenever, and you can take a sample from wherever else and drop it into your study. So digital drawing and painting on a small scale and eventually getting larger is is a good way of learning. So start small. But in here, in the drawing and painting folder, are lots and lots of ideas, which invariably I will select. Or no, my motivation here is not me, it's you. So, or students, art students. And there is a bucket load of starting points, which you may want to start copying from now. You may think that these could provide you with a direction or provide you with inspiration for perhaps what you do over the summer, or just generally you may begin to like a particular style of art and a particular style of wording that could be stimulated from these pages. So as you know, what I've been asking you to do with your summer assignment is along the lines of working to this scale in this style you can see on screen. It's a sort of modest book, but if you imagine that in a concertina effect, and little studies and drawings and doodangs, of which can be doodles, can be from primary source, they can come from your head, they can come from a variety of different sources. And because this is on brown paper already, the space is less aggressive, so try, if you can, work on a color, don't work on white. White tends to be, as I said, aggressive. Add white, add things, you can then just use white acrylic or white pencil or chalk or whatever. Use combinations of media, just work in little fragments of design, and eventually you will treat this little journal, or you'll add to it on a regular basis. I do think I've got some growth and decay here. Okay, so so your project is growth and decay, and there's a sort of separate pinnage for this, of which does involve photography, and it does involve more geared to the topics the starting points that I'm asking you to begin with in September. Even things like that wonderful set of old trainers there, those Converse. What a lovely thing to draw. There's so much texture and pattern and rhythm to them that, stuck for ideas. So I'm just going to print that out, I'm going to copy it. I'm going to copy a bit of it, and I'm going to, forget about thinking too hard. It just is something that that will get me started. Equally, any of these studies can be interpreted almost immediately. And you can begin to work or generate ideas over the summer according to the project. So that's Pinterest, and as you know, it is there's a wealth of ideas within these sort of pages. Okay, so I'll stop sharing now and come back to some sort of reality, I suppose. Okay, so again, that's been recorded. So if you did miss the beginning bit, then have another look at it. If you have any questions, have a think now and stick your hand up in a minute, or press the button, and we'll get to you. But really, if you looked at the tasks, the summer assignments that I've set, and you can work not only there but beyond there. As I said, it's all about practice. There are no shortcuts, and all of the people that I've got appearing on the list here are superstars. And what you just need to do is get into regular habits of producing art. As I said, I've found a lot with the current predicament. My year 12s are not all of them, but there are a few that are adrift. They are adrift because they haven't got a regular one-to-one negotiation dialogue with me or art staff, whereby they can learn and move on. And again, I just need to encourage. I need to do the bum kicking, because there's no two ways about it. We're not artists yet. We're at school doing an A-level, but it's a good one, and it's the best performing, as I said, south of Edinburgh, and it relies upon you lot just getting stuck in and developing artwork. Start with drawing. Drawing is key. Draw with purpose, with skill, with some ingenuity. Take ownership over that summer project by creating your own concertina journal, which again will have your personality, and try and enjoy it. Try and enjoy it. Okay, have we got any questions? I've got about 5 minutes about equipment or about what's happening in the future. Or okay, Emma, talk to me.
So the concertina sketchbook, is that like a zigzag one, or is it just a normal one?
Yeah, it's a zigzag one.
Okay.
So yeah, you sort of, if I had to do a mime, this isn't going to be a good mime. It sort of goes like that. Whoop, whoop.
Okay.
So they join up, but you can hang it or you can present it on a table and it freestands.
Okay. That explains it then.
Okay, I might put an example on, but it's quite understandable when you get your head into it.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Harry, got a question? I know you got a question. Come on, talk to me. No? Okay, so next week, again, I'm in on Tuesdays and Thursdays predominantly, but we do have a pop-up shop, and you might want to take advantage of just coming in and grabbing some paper or some materials by which you can make your concertina journal, and again, be inventive with the types of tape and the types of surfaces that you use. Text is often good, map, book, newspaper, masking tape, again with the parcel tape as well. You can draw with a permanent marker on, particularly with a beveled edge, and it gives you a really nice quality of mark. But I just quite like you to be inventive with not only what you're drawing with, but what you're drawing on as well, and even work beyond that. So there are canvases that you can buy, there's paper that you can use and speculate, and as long as you're productive, it all can be, or can all contribute to your portfolio at the end. Okay, well, there endeth the session. Normally you'd be in and we'd have the music on, and we'd be I don't know what we did last year. We would be drawing popcorn in a variety of different styles. I like the freshness of and the organic nature of that object, and the actual drawing experiments you might be privy to anyway, because your art teacher may have done a sort of more continuous line, no look, automatic drawing, but it's that sort of expressive fine art attitude which I'd like you to balance with some proper good drawing, proper good artwork. So try and enjoy yourself, get your head into it, be creative, and ping me an email or a message. I will put this PowerPoint in a variety of places, but this session has been recorded, so it will be there if you need to revisit it. And I look forward to seeing you in the very near future. Okay, that's me. I'll say goodbye. Thank you for tuning in. I look forward to seeing your work. Right, ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.